Kenya is home to one of Africa's best-known political cartoonists, Godfrey Mwampembwa, better known as Gado. For the past 2 decades, Gado has used satire to make some salient political points and to hold power to account, not just in Kenya, but throughout East Africa. His work was published in the Nation Media Group and its flagship paper, the Nairobi-based Daily Nation. That all ended 3 months ago when Gado was fired. The circumstances are in dispute, but according to Gado, the pressure came from the top, not just the top of the media group, but from the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta. In Kenya, media freedoms tend to ebb and flow. In 2010, the country trumpeted its constitutional reforms that guaranteed press freedoms. But with elections coming up next year and with groups like Al-Shabaab from neighboring Somalia posing a security threat, some of those guarantees are not worth the constitutional paper they're written on. The Listening Post's Nick Muirhead now from Nairobi on Gado and what his story says about the state of the news media in Kenya.
This is Gado, and this is how he sees his own story.
I have religious leaders, terrorists, politicians, crooks, lawyers, feminists, and so forth. And what it says is, in your everyday work, you're probably going to annoy a certain section of the society, certain people.
To tell critical stories, then you have to criticize people of esteem in society. I mean, people who are considered to be leaders or people who are considered to be opinion makers, you know. They drive the national agenda. So he is right in saying that he has offended almost everyone.
Gado caused much of that offence while working for the Daily Nation, the Nation Media Group's biggest newspaper and widely considered Kenya's paper of record. Like most political cartoonists, it was often his visual devices that made his points and made him enemies. Like in 2011, when Deputy Prime Minister, now President Uhuru Kenyatta, was under investigation by the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity, Gado attached an ICC ball and chain around his leg. He put a turban on Deputy President William Ruto because of his alleged complicity in an illegal land grab involving a Sikh businessman. But it was this cartoon, published in January last year, that depicts what Gado called the sins of Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete, that was the beginning of the end for Gado at the Daily Nation, even though the cartoon was published in neighboring Tanzania in the Nation Media Group's regional paper, the East African.
It was one of the things that really just spoke to what was happening in Tanzania that often wasn't spoken about. Tanzanians, by East African standards, are politically active, but not as aggressive as, say, your Uganda or your Kenya. And so speaking about these things in a fashion that Gado did was something unnatural and perhaps even refreshing for them.
I don't think it's one of my harshest cartoons that I've done. I mean, I've done far much critical and far much ferocious drawings in the past. And so I was very surprised that caused the East Africa to be banned in Tanzania.
When the Kikwete administration banned the paper, the Nation Media Group scrambled to Tanzania to do some damage control. To keep the peace, Gado agreed to take 1 year of paid leave. But when the cartoonist tried to return to work, he was told that his contract would not be renewed. It was an unexpected end to a 2-decade-long working relationship, a symbiotic partnership where one party offered a platform and the other a satirical bite that would help earn the Nation Media Group a reputation for not pulling any political punches. But Gado is not the only journalist to be forced out of this news organization in recent months, and the question here in Nairobi is what's going on at one of Kenya's most influential newspapers. In January this year, managing editor Dennis Galava was fired after he wrote a critical op-ed about President Kenyatta. Then in March, the Sunday news editor Mugumo Munene and investigations editor Andrew Tie were also fired in unclear circumstances. A lot of fingers are pointing at Tom Mshindi, who started as a journalist at the paper, then spent some time on the corporate side of things as the company's chief operating officer before returning to the news side as editor-in-chief.
These were insights that I got from a couple of senior reporters who didn't want to be named about what happened with Tom Shindi after he became the chief operating officer some years back. The business side of things became more important to him than the journalism, that he never really came back from, as us journalists call it, the dark side.
It's completely not true. I have directly not changed the journalism. I can't. My role as editor-in-chief is to make sure that the policy document, our editorial policy, that speaks to our independence as a newspaper company, as a TV company, as a media company, our responsibility to be fair to our subject, to be as objective as we can, and be sensitive to the various aspects and the various stakeholders that we deal with, is really what I do.
Gado, Galava, Munene and Tiyer are all suing the Nation Media Group for unfair dismissal. In his affidavit, Galava claims that he was fired because he refused to play ball in Mashindi's, quote, insidious power games. The company could face a hefty legal bill, but it can probably afford it. The Nation Media Group is owned by Prince Karim Aga Khan, a British businessman with vast commercial interests in the region. Schools, universities, hospitals, hotels, banks, among many others, which rely on a good working relationship with the government to function effectively. Add to that the fact that government advertising is a crucial revenue stream for the Nation Media Group. But Mshindi calls the company's size a strength, not a weakness.
Because we are a big commercial company. We are able to withstand some of those pressures. Government, yes, is a significant advertiser, but not so significant that we cannot survive a withdrawal.
Government is a top advertiser. I think we are number one now. The investment government makes on advertisement because of our law that most of our decisions have to be published in at least 3 newspapers. That alone opens up advertising as an obligatory measure for government. But we do not use advertising as a leverage on how media houses operate their business. It is in the interest of government to ensure private business succeeds.
That is what the government spokesman says. However, media freedom groups say that the free flow of information in Kenya has declined dramatically since President Kenyatta came into power, who himself has said that newspapers are only good for wrapping meat. It's a complicated story, so we asked Gado to sum it up in a cartoon about Kenya's media landscape.
This is my view, that the media has abdicated its role. And I've used the famous the emperor without cloth and twisted it around, and what I have is the media without cloth, because I pretty much feel that the media in its own way has abdicated its role as the arbiter in public matters.
I believe that we are still very much executing this role, because I could challenge the cartoonists and say, what are we not doing currently? We are reporting very aggressively issues around corruption. We are reporting very aggressively around the inadequacy of institutions. We are focusing very aggressively on the performance of the public bodies.
I think that there's a changing of guard even at the lower levels, entry-level journalists. People who don't understand what it means to be able to defend the paper's right to pursue what it wants editorially. And that potentially is a dangerous thing, because then they'd be more malleable to commercial interests. Then they'd be more malleable to pressure from the managerial side of things, which other hardened journalists wouldn't have been.
It had never been an issue for editors to be sacked. So when stories about editors started coming up in the media and online critics picked it up, then the perception of the public is that there is something wrong with their industry.
If that is the perception, then the reality is that Kenya's media lack credibility. That leaves them and the Kenyatta government exposed, which is what Gado, the cartoonist turned media critic, is saying in his own way.
On the download now, our viewers on the state of the news media in Kenya.
When I first received the news about Gado being fired, I felt devastated about it, because I believe Gado was a great influence to the youth. He brought a new idea to the political world by putting it in a funny way. You can really understand what is happening in the political world, and I believe he should be given a new contract so you can get back to reading newspapers.
One big problem that I've had with the Kenyatta presidency is the use of terrorism as a label to arrest journalists for actually reporting on the news. Terrorism has been used as an overreach to actually impede on media freedom.